This video shows you how to strip your wire and then subsequently how to wire your wall plug. So first I will be using my Stanley knife to undo the cable ties, in order to retrieve the cable and wire stripper that's, in the packaging. It's a quick strip cable and wire stripper, so it should save you time, when stripping your wires, to get the conductors out of the insulation. And if we zoom out or get the cable stripper a lot closer, we can sort of like work out how the mechanism works. So them two grips or lever latch onto the wire at the top. The bladed grip on the right hand side gives it a round fine cut, and the toothed grip on the left hand side, you know, sort of like strips the bare wire naked, or by dragging the sheath or the outer layer further away from the bladed grip. So the bladed grip on the right, cuts the wire at top and bottom, holds the wire in position and pulls it to the right, whereas the toothed grip on the left holds the wire firmly, grips it really firmly and pulls it to the left. The simultaneous action of both the right grip and the left grip strips the wire, and then subsequently adjust, the tension knob to suit the wire thickness. The wire cutter at the bottom end, cuts the naked wire, and at the stripper or clipper handle, you've got the wire cutter and, three toothed slots. The first toothed slot is used for crimping thick wires or fork connections. The second slot for medium wires or spade connections. And the third slot for bullet connections or thin wire. So just like here, you've got the fork connection in yellow in the first slot, the male blue spade connection in the second slot, and the male red bullet connection in the third slot. And so each of the individual toothed slots are used for crimping, both the male and the female connections. And so say, for example, insert, the male red connection into its female connection, then crimp it with, the third toothed slot. And you can basically use the wire cutter there to trim naked wires. And so now that we know how the mechanism works, we're going to place the wire into the jaws of the cable stripper. And basically one half of the jaw, presumably or supposedly, is 1/2 inch as it reads, on the scale. If you latch the scale of the wire stripper against the measuring tape, you can see that one side of the jaw is capable of taking about 1/2 inch of cable or wire, depending on how you read it. You just take into account the error of parallax. Your reading may be skewed by 0.1 of an inch, on either side, depending on how you read it. So just shut one eye when you read it, because parallax is more inclined as the object gets closer to your eyes. The cable and wire stripper is capable of stripping wires with a diameter of 0.2 to 6 mil. And you can also see on the spectrum gauge of the stripper that the jaws line of travel runs anywhere between 10mm to 24mm, depending on where you place your wire. And so Core Electrics have done a very good job of providing you with a spectrum scale to work with. So the top part of the scale is in imperial and the bottom part of the scale is in metrics, okay? So basically top part of the scale in line with the left jaw is in imperial, and the bottom part of the scale, in line with the left jaw is in metrics. And you can see that the arrowhead, on the stripper is at the 10 mil mark when it latches onto the measuring tape and extends all the way to 24 mil, at the end of the toothed left jaw. And so if you extend the wire length or gauge to its maximum threshold or its desired length, you can prep to strip a cable anywhere between 21 to 24 mil approximately, which is, the maximum threshold for the yellow gauge cable length. But when you've actually got your cable in there, you will be only able to strip, up to 11 mil, okay, at a time, okay, despite the fact that you've got about 24 mil of cable length, in the jaws. And so now that you understand how the stripper works, we can proceed to strip a cable, okay? And so the next stage would be to strip off the insulation, off of the wire. The first step would be to place the wires, in the jaw of the cable stripper. So here, I'm not worried about, the length of the cable, as this is just for demonstration purposes. If the insulation doesn't come off quite easily because it's quite soft, you can repeat and reproduce the process up until, you strip off the insulation. And also remember to utilize the tension to suit the wire's thickness if need be. And you can see that the first insulation stripping didn't strip all the way through, so I'll repeat and reproduce the process. And you can see during the second run, we've got more naked wire. Okay, so we can take out, the insulation at the top. Pin the wire at them two jaws if you need more naked wire and strip it open. Okay, whatever length of naked wire you need. Okay, so you can take out, the top part of the insulation, or you can roll, the top part of the insulation and before taking off the top insulation. Or you can just take off, the top part of the insulation and roll the stranded bits together. Okay, whichever you choose, it's perfectly fine. Okay. And if you find out that, the naked wire length is too long, you can trim the naked wire with the wire cutter. Okay, so just get them 3 bits, in between them twisted strands, and, just cut the naked wire with the blade. Okay. And like I said previously, you can use the gauge as a guide, to cut the desired cable length that you desire. And so if I set my cable in between them jaws right before the gauge, I know I'll be getting like an 11mm strip of naked wire. Repeat and reproduce the process again if the strip isn't adequate. And if you've got one piece of wire with a piece of insulation lagging behind, you do not need to strip off all 3 wires at the same time. You can strip off one of them wires to get off the insulation, as exemplified here. So, repeat and reproduce the process until you get the desired length of naked wire that you want. You can achieve the desired length by utilizing the gauge that comes with your cable or wire stripper. Or you can cut an X length of wire, then subsequently trim them wires in the wire cutter, as shown here. Okay, so cut to whatever length you want, then trim with the wire cutter. Okay. If you cut stranded wires, you get loads of strands all over the place. But, if you twist them wires, you might get stacks of wires as opposed to strands of wires in your test cell or in your workstation. You will develop, the skills needed for stripping wires as you continue to practice or you continue to use the stripper. If you get stuck, one of the wires doesn't strip properly, or if your insulation is quite soft and would not readily come off the naked wire, repeat and reproduce the process until you achieve that length. And if your wire, by every right so, is too long, then you can trim the wire off utilizing your wire cutter. And so pretty much the action of the cable or wire stripper suggests that, it doesn't necessarily cut the insulation, it pulls it apart. Okay. But, when the insulation strip bit comes off, it appears like it's been cut, but it hasn't. It's actually been pulled apart. Okay. The blade of one of the jaws cuts slightly in. Okay. And the 2/3 jaw, holds it into position whilst you strip or pull the insulation apart. And if you want to see how to wire up, your 3-point mains plug, click on the link in the description.